All right, get ready for a deep dive into the Oscars, but with a twist. We're talking about a potential win that would not only be historic, but also echoes a remarkable family achievement from decades past.
A real legacy story in the making, the kind of thing the Oscars love, right?
Exactly. So we're going to dig into Fernanda Torres and her possible Best Actress win for I'm Still Here, which on its own would be huge E for Brazilian cinema.
Huge is an understatement. It would be the first time a Brazilian actress won in that category.
Right. But it gets even more interesting because 25 years ago, her mother, Fernanda Montenegro, was the first Brazilian actress ever nominated for an Oscar.
For Central Station, another incredible film.
It's like poetry almost. So where do we even begin with this story? I mean, we've got articles here talking about Torres' chances, but they all mention this mother-daughter connection.
Well, first we have to understand what a big deal the Oscars are, especially for international films. I mean, a win isn't just a trophy, it's global recognition.
Yeah, it puts a spotlight on the entire film industry of a country.
Exactly. And suddenly everyone wants to see what else is coming out of Brazil, what other stories they have to tell.
Okay, that makes sense. So Torres' nomination for I'm Still Here is already a big deal because it's only the second time for a Brazilian actress. But tell me more about Central Station and why Montenegro's nomination back in '99 was such a game changer.
Central Station was a revelation. It put Brazilian cinema on the map in a way that hadn't happened before.
So before that, Brazilian films weren't really on the international radar.
They were making great films, of course, but Central Station had this crossover appeal. It earned nominations for Best Foreign Language Film and Best Actress.
Wow, double recognition.
Oh.
Okay, so we've established that Montenegro's nomination was a watershed moment,
Yeah.
but you mentioned her daughter, Fernanda Torres, is now nominated for I'm Still Here, and both films were directed by Walter Salles. That's mind-blowing.
Isn't that something? It's like destiny had a hand in this whole thing.
It makes you wonder, right? Like, is there something in the water in Brazil? But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, tell me more about Central Station and what was so captivating about Montenegro's performance.
She played Dora, this woman who's hardened by life, living in Rio, seeing it all. But she forms this unexpected bond with a young boy, and her performance, it was masterful. Subtle, powerful, and incredibly moving.
So it was a character with depth, and Montenegro really brought that to life.
Okay, so how does I'm Still Here compare to Central Station? Similar vibes or totally different?
They both tackle social issues within Brazil, but in different ways. Central Station is more about human connection amidst poverty, while I'm Still Here delves into the world activism during a very turbulent time in Brazil's recent past. Torres plays Eunice Paiva, a woman deeply involved in fighting for social justice.
So both films deal with important aspects of Brazilian society, but through completely different lenses. That's really interesting. And to add to the excitement, Torres just won a Golden Globe for this role back in January. She did. And her acceptance speech was so touching. She dedicated the award to her mother, saying, "She was here 25 years ago, and this is proof that art can endure through life, even in difficult moments like this."
Wow, chills. To have your mother, an Oscar nominee herself, right there with you is an amazing story. What was Montenegro's reaction to her daughter's win?
Pure joy. And beyond that, she's been so incredibly supportive of her daughter throughout this whole Oscar journey. She's even said that just getting the nomination is a victory in itself.
What a beautiful way to look at it. It's about the journey, not just the destination, right?
Exactly. And speaking of journeys, I think we need to talk about Walter Salles, the director who brought both of these stories to life. What do you make of his style, his connection to these films?
I was just thinking about this. It's so intriguing that he's the common thread between these two films, these two actresses, these two pivotal moments in Brazilian cinema. What draws him to these stories?
He has a way of capturing the human spirit, the subtle nuances of emotion, even in the midst of chaos or hardship.
So he's not afraid to delve into complex social and political issues, but does so in a way that feels grounded and authentic.
Exactly. His films are character-driven. They explore the inner lives of people facing tough situations. You feel their struggles, their hopes, their fears.
And I'm Still Here specifically deals with political turmoil. What was happening in Brazil at the time that sets the stage for this film?
The film doesn't explicitly show the political events, but it's set during a time of immense unrest and change. Imagine a society on edge, people fighting for their voices to be heard.
And that's the backdrop against which Eunice Paiva, Torres' character, is fighting for social justice.
Right. It's about resilience, courage, and holding on to hope in the face of incredible challenges. So we've been talking about Walter Salles and how these two films Central Station and I'm Still Here, really reflect his style, his fascination with these human stories, these social issues, the political climate.
Yeah, it's like he has this knack for finding these really powerful stories within these larger contexts.
Right, exactly. But let's talk about the films themselves a bit more. Like, what is it about them that connects with audiences, even people who might not know much about Brazilian culture? What makes these stories resonate?
Well, you said it earlier, right? It's that human connection, the universal theme that we can all relate to.
Yeah, and Central Station really captures that beautifully. I mean, you've got Dora, this woman who starts out so closed off, and then this young boy who needs her help, and they form this bond.
It's like that classic unlikely pairing that we see in so many great films, right?
Totally. And it works because deep down, we all crave connection. We all need someone to lean on, someone to understand us.
And you mentioned earlier how Dora, Montenegro's character, kind of goes through this transformation throughout the film. Is there like a specific scene or moment that stands out to you as really key to her development?
There's this scene where Dora's writing a letter for a woman, an illiterate woman, and she starts making things up, embellishing the story to make it sound better.
Oh, wow. So she's not exactly a saint from the start, huh?
No, not at all. And that's what makes her so interesting. She's flawed, she's jaded, but there's this flicker of something else there too.
The longing for something more.
Exactly. And it's in that scene, that moment of dishonesty, that we start to see that crack in her facade, that hint of vulnerability.
And that sets her on this path toward connecting with this young boy.
Right, and that's when the real transformation begins.
So, Central Station is all about human connection, poverty, personal growth. What about I'm Still Here? What themes resonated most strongly in that film?
I'm Still Here is more about resilience, that fighting spirit. It's about standing up for what you believe in, even when it's dangerous.
It's set during a time of political upheaval in Brazil.
Right. And the film doesn't shy away from portraying those anxieties, the risks involved in speaking out against injustice. But it also shows the incredible strength of people like Eunice, Torres' character.
You mentioned earlier that the film doesn't actually show the specific political events.
Right.
It's more about the characters' experiences.
Yeah, it's subtle in that way. It focuses on the human cost of this turmoil. We see the fear, the determination, the resilience in the characters' faces, their actions.
It's like their personal stories become a reflection of the larger political landscape.
Exactly. And it makes it all the more impactful because it's not just about abstract ideas or events, it's about real people's lives being affected.
So we have Central Station, this story about human connection amidst poverty, and then I'm Still Here, which is all about this fight for social justice in the face of political turmoil. Two very different films, but both so powerfully Brazilian.
And both directed by the same guy. Walter Salles really has a gift for finding these universally resonant stories within specific cultural contexts.
Do you think these films and their success internationally have helped pave the way for other Brazilian filmmakers, to tell their stories and reach a global audience?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. Montenegro's Oscar nomination for Central Station, that was huge. It put Brazilian cinema on the map in a whole new way.
It's like it opened the door, showed the world that there were these incredible stories coming out of Brazil.
Exactly. And then Torres being nominated for I'm Still Here, it's like this continuation of that legacy.
So one film's success can create a ripple effect, opening doors for others.
Right, and that's why representation matters so much, why it's so important to have diverse voices and stories being told.
It's like a chain reaction of creativity and inspiration.
Exactly. And, beyond their impact on the film industry, these films also offer a window into Brazilian culture and identity.
Oh yeah, totally. Like for people who may not have a lot of exposure to Brazil, these films offer a glimpse into the country's complexities, its social fabric.
Right, Central Station touches on poverty, the resilience of the human spirit, the vibrancy of the culture, even amidst hardship. And I'm Still Here delves into this fight for social justice, the courage of individuals who refuse to be silenced.
So they're not just entertaining films, they're also thought-provoking. They make you think about larger issues, about the human condition.
Exactly. And that's what makes them so powerful. They stay with you long after you've watched them.
We talked earlier about how the Oscars can sometimes overshadow the art itself. But in the case of these films, do you think that the awards attention has actually helped bring these important stories to a wider audience?
I think it has. It's like the Oscars provide this platform, this spotlight.
So even if the focus on awards can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming, it can also be a force for good.
Right. It can help introduce people to films and filmmakers they might not have discovered otherwise.
And that's a pretty amazing thing. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the emotional impact of Central Station to the themes of resilience and activism in I'm Still Here, and of course, this incredible mother-daughter connection that ties it all together.
It's really a remarkable story, isn't it? 2 generations of talented actresses, both directed by the same visionary filmmaker, both making their mark on the global stage.
You know, it's funny because we were just talking about how the whole Oscar frenzy can sometimes take away from the art itself. But I actually think this whole family element adds another dimension to it, you know?
It's like a story within a story, and it makes it so much more compelling.
It's not just about winning an award. It's about legacy, about carrying on a family tradition of artistic excellence.
And about the enduring power of storytelling, how these films connect us across cultures and generations.
Speaking of which, we talked earlier about how Montenegro's nomination for Central Station was a game changer for Brazilian cinema, especially when it came to funding and distribution.
Oh, absolutely. It was a watershed moment. Before Central Station, Brazilian films really struggled to get noticed internationally. But after Montenegro's nomination, the film's critical acclaim, everything changed.
It's amazing to think that one film, one performance, can have such a ripple effect, not just on an individual's career, but on an entire industry.
It really shows the power of art, you know?
Yeah.
How it can open doors and create opportunities.
It's like a chain reaction, right? One success leads to another, and suddenly, a whole new wave of filmmakers has a chance to tell their stories.
Exactly. And that's so important because we need diverse voices, diverse perspectives to enrich the global cinematic landscape.
It's not just about Brazil either. I think this story has a universal message about the power of art to transcend borders and connect us all on a human level.
Absolutely. And I think that's something worth celebrating, regardless of who wins on Oscar night.
Well said. So, as we wrap up our deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
I hope they'll be inspired to check out these films, to see for themselves the power of Brazilian storytelling, the beauty, the complexity, the humanity.
And maybe even explore other films from around the world, you know?
Yeah.
Step outside their comfort zone and discover the richness and diversity of global cinema.
There's a whole world of stories out there waiting to be discovered, and each one has the potential to move us, to challenge us, to expand our horizons.
Couldn't have said it better myself. A huge thank you to you for joining us on this journey into the world of Brazilian cinema.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world of film.